Renters insurance, that is such a big one. And honestly, the question I always ask is if you can think about all of your belongings that you have moved into that apartment, that home, or wherever you live, think about all of your belongings. Think about the amount that those belongings cost. The second question is, do you have that amount in your bank account right now? Like if that home or that apartment was to catch on fire, if there's any type of natural disaster or flooding, if someone breaks into your apartment or your home and steals all of that stuff, do you have that money in the bank right now? Like at hand, you can just go into the bank account and just like, okay, that was nothing, I can buy it. If not, you need renter's insurance. And mostly renters insurance, they're going to give you a little bit more than what your stuff is worth. Like for me, I may have 30,000 worth of belongings here, but I'm always going to get an additional 20,000 or something. For me, I'm going to get about 50,000 because it's really inexpensive when you think about it.
Yeah.
Wedding rings and things that you spent lots of money on, like laptops, and those things are expensive. And if you don't have that money at hand, then you need that type of safety net in place to protect you and your belongings.
Yeah. And I would think even if you have that type of money stashed away where you can go back and just replace everything in your house, like, do you really
want to? Right. Right. Absolutely.
Like, I'm sure you were saving that money for something else, but do you really want to take that money and replenish everything and then have to rebuild what you put up back into your bank account? And that's important that you ask that because a lot of people don't have that money.
And what a lot of people don't know is the person who is renting that property to you, they have coverage in place. If something happens, they're covered. Like if the building burns down, they are all the way covered. So why don't you have coverage in place for your stuff? Like you need that.
That's important. And that's true too, because I've seen where apartment buildings have, burned or whatever the case is. And for a couple of days, you'll see like the yellow tape and caution and all this other stuff. And then the next week you see the builders out there rebuilding, revamping, tearing stuff down.
That's that coverage. That's coverage.
Thank you. That's because they have coverage to cover this incident. But you're stuck out because they're trying to put you in place somewhere like a Red Cross or something like that, and you don't have any refuge. And so that's super important. The other thing that you said that was very important too, that people may not know, is that renters insurance is cheap.
It's so cheap.
Yeah, I'd rather pay renters insurance price for everything than to pay what we paying in car insurance and all the other stuff. Just to be transparent.
If you don't mind, I wanted to say something else about the renters insurance, because a lot of times when we think about renters insurance, we're only thinking about the property, like your personal property. Think about the liability that comes with it, the liability insurance that comes with it. If something happens to the place that you're living, there's something in place that they will actually pay for you to go live somewhere else, until you can get on your feet. Like there's also an additional coverage for that. Like it's not just about your personal property. It's just about your well-being altogether. It's protection. It's going to make you whole. It's not just going to be, okay, we're going to give you your things back, but we don't care where you're going to stay. No, it's everything. It covers everything. And that's why I always say it's a safety net, to have insurance in place.
Yeah. And that was the next part that I was going to get to as well, because, with transparency, I think our policy is like, I think it's 100,000 or whatever. But we pay like what? I want to say like $40 for 6 months or something like that. It's just, it's just that cheap. And then also the living expense. Oh, I'm so glad you touched on that. And so that, thank you so much. So that the living expense, a lot of people don't know, if you are displaced and you have this coverage on your renter's insurance, you can go stay at a hotel or Airbnb.
Yes.
There's coverage for that. So I'm going to say that again. If you are displaced, you do not have to go to Red Cross or anything like that. The coverage, if you have the coverage in your policy, you will have a living expense.
Yes.
That will cover how many days you got to be out of the house. Let's say, for example, a pipe burst in your house, in your apartment, and you're flooded out. and you need to go to somewhere that can accommodate you and your family.
Mildew, things like that. Yeah.
Stuff like that. That can definitely help you with the living expense on your policy. Ta-da! Don't they sound nice? Unfortunate, but at least you're not stressed out about, well, I don't know where I'm gonna go. Because I hate seeing that. I absolutely hate seeing someone stuck out. That's definitely not a good space. So in regards to the renters, let's move on to the mortgage insurance, if you would. So I did.
If I could just say one more thing about the renters insurance policy, because they are so cheap. And I say cheap because I think about the value of it, like the coverage that you're getting versus how much you're paying for that particular coverage. Those type of policies is best to have a lower deductible. You know, you don't want to have a $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 deductible on a renter's policy that you're only paying at the most probably $50 for, if you, depending on how much coverage you have. Like for instance, most of my friends, I tell them go with that $200 deductible. Because if something happens, the last thing you want to worry about is how to get $1,000. You know, just go ahead with that $200. Most people, they have $200 in the bank if something happens, you know?
Yeah, so, and you should, because the deductible part, that's good that you touched on that as well. And I'm glad that you said that, because we want to lower the expense of the insurance policy. I take the higher deductible. You might be paying $5 a month, but your deductible is $2,500. Right. That's not gonna work.
Not gonna work.
That defeats the purpose. Now you're taking this tool and making it seem like it's unnecessary, because we know if you trying to get it down to $5, we know you don't have $2,500 in the bank to cover something like this. So go ahead and pay, the increase on the insurance per month. Yes. And then if they come and say, oh, your deductible is $100, for real? Hold on, let me swipe my card real quick.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
It's just easier to do it that way. So yes, I'm glad that you explained that. So just to recap renters insurance real quick. So it is cheap in our in our opinion, in our definition. It is more better to pay a little bit more concerning renters insurance to have a lower deductible or a reachable deductible. If you can pay the $1,000 deductible, then go with whatever you can. But if you can lower it by paying a little bit more per month, then do that. The other thing is, with renters insurance, there is a living expense. So should you be displaced or moved or whatever the case is, make sure that you have that living expense. The other thing I wanted to discuss about renters insurance, I'm glad I did that recap, is liability. If something happens in your house, let's say you're having a family gathering, somebody slips and falls and it hurts real bad or whatever, and they try to sue you, guess what? You have coverage for that person. There is liability coverage for liability across the board. You can't go nowhere without liability.
Right.
That's just the bottom line. But there is liability coverage inside of your renters insurance as well. And if you want to, guys, while you're listening to this, pull out your policy and start reading it, because we're going to touch on something that's in your space. So am I right, Antoinette? I want to make sure I'm on the right.
Yes, and disclaimer, because it happened at your place, you're responsible.
Yes.
So that's why you need liability insurance in place.
Yeah, that's important. So those things are in your renters insurance. Now we're moving on to mortgage insurance, which is big for all of those people out here buying properties on top of properties, into their first home and everything. So mortgage insurance, to me, this is just my opinion, seems like it's similar to renters, but it expounds just a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Just a little bit more. So we talked about the liability, which is also a mortgage. We talked about the living expense for displacement, which is in the mortgage insurance as well. What are some other things that's inside of that policy?
For the mortgage policy? So when you think of a mortgage policy, it's like you said, it's a renter's policy, but it extends to the actual structure of the property, because it is your home. Like, you purchased the actual property itself, so it's going to cover the dwelling, or what we call it, the structure of the home.
Yeah.
A lot of things that I love about mortgage insurance, a lot of people don't know, is you can just basically cover so many other things under a mortgage policy. Like, for instance, you can do the same thing with a renters, but you can just cover a little bit more with the mortgage policy. Like if you have dune buggies and things like that, or maybe a small boat or something like that, that can also be covered under your mortgage policy. For instance, most policies, it comes with a little bit of coverage for jewelry, but if you spent, like, I would say 2,000 and up, no, honestly, I would say 1,500 and up for a wedding ring or something, you definitely need to have that named on that type of policy. So if something were to happen, you can just go buy a whole new wedding ring. It may hurt, but it'll hurt a little bit less, if you have that coverage in place.